MJ all day. Boy, did I love that Michael Jordan documentary last night. MJ all day. Who watched Jordan special last night? It was, man, I've watched some Netflix shows recently. B-Mill, what's up? Rob McGuire. My buddy, what's up, man? Good morning. Hope you had a great weekend. But that was, it was a great distraction last night, and it was, I'm 44 years old, so those early 90s to mid-90s Bulls teams were, I mean, I was, you know, my youth. I was in high school, and then, you know, in my late teens to early 20s when that was happening. So just that time for me, the 90s, was really awesome. And then to be able to experience and watch, you know, arguably one of the best teams of all time during that point in my life. Sorry, I dropped it. So what's up, Fern? And then we had commercials running. I think we had 2 commercials last night during the Last Dance that ran during the Michael Jordan special in York, and almost everybody I know was watching it. There was no way I was going to miss it, and I recorded it. But I mean, especially in those first 2 or 3 episodes, I think it was 2 episodes last night. Jerry Krause, the general manager of this amazing team, you know, I think was a good reminder for me of a couple leadership lessons I've learned along the way. And I wanted to share those with you today because I think they're super important. And it was a great reminder for me. I mean, I pride myself on, you know, constantly pushing myself to be a better leader. And that's outside of whatever it is that you do in your business. And that was one of the things I think that everybody needs to stay and remain focused on, is that regardless of the business that you're in, you are in the people business. Unless you, I mean, well, even if you work by yourself, if you are the sole employee of your business, in some capacity, there's other people that rely on you, your customers. And in some capacity, you have to interact with those customers. But for the most part, this is directly, you know, related to businesses that have employees and team members that work with them and customers. And you are 100% responsible as the leader to engage and lead your people. It is arguably more important than any other single thing that you can do in your business. So if you look at, you know, the things that you do each day as a leader, I think too often we get caught up in, you know, the rat race. We get way too caught up in, you know, dealing with customers, which again, I'm not saying it's not important. I'm trying to put it into perspective and share with you how important the development and leadership of your people is, even in comparison to your customers. Because the reality is, if you take care of your people will take care of your customers. And that is 100% without a doubt a proven fact. So the more you would pour into your people and develop the people that you work with, quite frankly, the less customer issues that you would have, because your people would rally around each other and take care of whatever customer issues that pop up. And more than likely, you would have minimal to no complaints, because the customer service on the front end of your business would be extraordinary. And I think that's something that was obvious to me, you know, as this general manager of the Bulls, this Jerry Krause. He was extremely skilled at negotiating. I mean, he made some of the best, you know, business deals ever. I mean, if you look at, you know, and it's unfortunate, it's terrible, and Scottie Pippen got the short end of the stick, but he was the 122nd highest paid player in the NBA in 1997-98. And he was probably the second best player in the world, top 10 for sure. And he had signed a long-term contract 7 years earlier, or 6 or 7 years earlier, that he wanted to guarantee money. So, you know, Scottie Pippen signed a long-term deal in like 1990, or 1991, and he wanted a long-term deal. And that year, $2.5 million for a player of his caliber was very fair. So Jerry Krause, as the general manager of that team, did an extraordinary job making business decisions. He could have not paid Michael Jordan at that point $36 million. Even today that would be, I think the entire salary cap for teams back then was 27, and Jordan made 36 or 30 some. I don't know the exact amount. I think it was 36 million. But he knew that he had to pay Jordan, and obviously it paid off. They won 6 championships. He didn't have a good relationship with Michael Jordan. Who knows what they could have won? Who knows how that contributed to Michael Jordan retiring when he did? So even though they experienced success and are arguably one of the best teams of all time, that leader, Jerry Krause, forgot, I think, two key fundamentals. You're always in the people business. Now, whether it's the way that the story's told or it's, if it's true or not, there was no attempt on his part to connect with his people. And that's something that I've constantly, as myself, sort of questioned about whether or not I was doing the right thing, because depending on what leadership book you subscribe to, there's teachings that would tell you that leadership as a position, there should be a fair amount of separation between you and the people that work for you. That you don't want to be influenced by your personal relationships when you make business decisions. So let's use the Scottie Pippen, situation as an example. If Jerry Krause had developed a personal relationship with Scottie Pippen, in his eyes looking back on it, it may have influenced his decision to pay him or renegotiate his salary prior to the conclusion of his contract, which from business perspective, it's cut and dry. There was no, once you signed a contract back then, and particularly with that owner and that general manager, it was done. They stood behind their contract, and they expected the players to stick with their contract, and they just did not renegotiate contracts. There was no, 2 years in. Man, I keep dropping this freaking note that I have here, and I don't want to lose it. But there was no renegotiating. So, the lack of a personal relationship in that perspective for Jerry Krause, the general manager of the Bulls, was probably a wise decision in his mind. But in retrospect, when you look back on it, their relationship was non-existent. There was zero personal connection between Jerry Krause and Scottie Pippen, who at that point was possibly the second best player in the world, definitely the second best player on the team. And as they showed you when they opened that season after winning a national championship with very few changes in the roster, they didn't really lose anybody. No one had really gotten, beyond their golden years, but Scottie Pippen had made the decision that this ankle injury that he had, which was a ruptured tendon, he didn't have a broken bone or anything like that, that he made the decision to get surgery late summer, and then it carried over into the season, first several months of the season, and they were like a 500 team. They struggled without Scottie Pippen. So, and they were on the brink of collapse at that point. Obviously, as you watch the show and you listen to Jordan talk about, how people got this confidence, and other teams now had this confidence that they could beat the Bulls, which he thought was extremely dangerous. And if you know anything about Michael Jordan and this series, and even in the beginning, confirms it, that he wanted to win at all cost. And part of what he was extraordinary at was the mental aspect of competition, and how he would just, try and remove any thought that his competition had a chance. He would just, talk smack. He would go for the jugular. He would try and crush them and just completely take away any little confidence that they had. And it's certainly effective. He was one of the best competitors in the world. But that leader, Jerry Krause, was a horrible people person. He did nothing to communicate, did nothing to connect, and he saw himself as a position above the people that worked for him rather than a relationship. So that's the first reminder that I got from that, is your leadership is a relationship, not a position, right? So you shouldn't look at it as a vertical position to where you're above people. It's a relationship and should be treated horizontally. You need to walk with your people. You need to work with your people. You need to talk with your people, and you need to build relationships. It's a whole different segment and a whole different conversation. But if you don't know who your people are, it's difficult to connect with them. And then it becomes a very mechanical relationship where, they're operating and working for and working towards an innate object. Where when they can rally behind a leader, which I think Phil Jackson, as a result, when you look at that, he was a master of. Right? No doubt Phil Jackson knows his basketball and X's and O's and all that stuff. But it was clear that even in that episode last night, and someone even spoke up about it, is that he was a master of managing distractions. He was a master of bringing people together. He coached some of the most talented teams in the history of the NBA, which, the upside is that you have all this talent. The downside is you typically are dealing with a lot of egos, increased media attention. There's all these distractions. So when they say Phil Jackson was a master of managing distractions, he was a master of keeping people focused because they were focused on him. They even Michael Jordan, if they talk about like when Phil Jackson's, I didn't remember Phil Jackson's contract being in question. I mean, how do you not pay that guy whatever he deserved to be paid back then? He had won 5 national championships and was on the heels of a second three-peat, which I don't think has ever happened. Yet the general manager had no relationship with him. So he believed that they were winning these championships as a result of the program as a whole, which is obviously, necessary. You can't have 2 people on the same page and 100 people in an organization not on the same page and be successful. But the reality is you have to recognize that the 2 main cogs in that wheel were Phil Jackson and Michael Jordan. And Phil Jackson's, ability, his great leadership qualities were the ability to connect with people, the ability to build relationships. And Michael Jordan, that year before this season, said, I won't put on a Bulls jersey. Matt Hockley, let's do it, man. Jordans for Jordans. Michael Jordan would not put on a Bulls uniform if Phil Jackson wasn't his coach. I mean, it's saying an awful lot. So I think one of the things that I took away from that was Jerry Krause's inability to be able to connect with people. One of the other things that us as leaders, I think, need to remember is we have to lead ourselves first. And I don't know this about it. It wasn't really talked about it, but I was thinking about this video this morning. Is we constantly, for me, I'm watching that and I'm getting some entertainment out of it, but at the same time, I'm making mental notes. I actually even wrote them down. That's the piece of paper that I keep, But that's a form of me leading myself, that I'm taking personal responsibility for myself and the development of my leadership abilities. And too often as leaders, we hold everybody else accountable to results. We all have scoreboards, scorecards, sales goals, profit goals, all of these results that we judge people on. But then as leaders, we judge a lot of times on our intentions, right? So like we had the best intentions. We wanted to hire the right person for that position and train them and coach them up, right? And then we hold that person in that position accountable for their results, but we don't hold ourselves accountable for coaching them and teaching them and training them to get up to the level that they need to be successful. So too often as leaders, write this down, is you cannot judge your team on results and judge yourself on intentions. You need to be held to the same, actually higher accountability than any of your team. You need to, so how do you do that? You first have to start with results. Like, you as a leader should have goals with very specific results that you hold yourself to. And, that's one of the things that you need to remind yourself as a leader and constantly be developing and leading yourself. And then holding yourself to a higher level of accountability than others, because you're not just accountable to yourself. You're accountable for, as a leader, everybody in your department, everybody on the team, everybody in the company. That's the final thing that I would say is, too often as leaders, we judge our teams on results, and we judge our own personal success on intentions, and it just does not work that way. You wouldn't say to a basketball player that, hey man, I know you tried hard. You played a lot of minutes, and you gave it your best effort. I appreciate your intentions, and as a result of your intentions, we're going to pay you $20 million a year. No, it's results. And in basketball, the results are judged on your statistics and your wins and losses. Like, clearly, people that have proven their ability to win get paid more than people that are, having good success statistic-wise, but are unable to, win. They're unable to connect with teammates. They're an issue in the locker room, and we hear about it all the time, right? It's definitely a big part of the negotiating process when players are in the middle of contract negotiations, or they're being courted by a certain team. If you look at, the top 20 players in the NBA and eliminate the top 3, there's very little difference in the statistics between those players. So one of the key aspects that they look for in a leader as a teammate is their ability to be able to connect with their team and lead their team. And they have to hold themselves to a different level of accountability. And never are we judged on our intentions, ever. You have to start with good intentions in order to have good results, but you can't have great intentions and shitty results and win. It just doesn't work. So why would a leader ever believe that we can be held to a different standard than our people? We judge our people based on results, and rightfully so. Like, at the end of the day, particularly in business or in team sports, it's all about winning and losing. That's at the end, when it all boils down, you're judged on whether you won or lost. And you cannot judge yourself as a leader based on your intentions. Like, I meant to do this. I've been working hard on that. No, you have to produce results, and your results start with the development and leading of your people. And if you're not doing that, you're failing as a leader. You may be succeeding as a manager. Maybe you're a player style coach in your business where you step in and take a sales call, or you're handling, customer negotiations, or business-to-business relationships, or whatever. And while there's a place for that, and it shows that you're willing to roll up your sleeves and get dirty, it can't be in place of real leadership, which starts with yourself. You have to lead yourself first, and it's the biggest challenge I think that most leaders deal with, namely myself, is that you can't take your eye off the prize, which is the development of people that starts with yourself. So for me as a leader, if I'm not constantly pushing myself to raise the ceiling and raise the bar and learn new things, if I didn't write down these notes last night after watching that awesome series and the clear gap in leadership that was evident on one of the greatest teams of all time, I wouldn't be doing myself any favors, and I wouldn't be holding myself accountable, which means I would be failing as a leader. Hope everybody has a great day. Have a good week. Hang in there. It's Monday. It'll be Friday before you know it. Later.